Blessings, good evening to you all. It's Tuesday night, so that means a few questions have come in. We'll try and answer them for you. Dear Luang Por, my 7-year-old son has seen spirits in our home since the last few years, only occasionally of such sightings, and the last encounter was more than a year or two in the house. We are not sure if those spirits he referred to are Peta beings or earthbound devas, as he can't describe them in detail. He only mentioned that they are white in colour. He wasn't really that afraid of such beings, just that he needs either my wife or myself to accompany him in the house. However, lately he sighted a few of these beings again in one of an old school hall. That was the first visit to that hall. My son is a normal child, just that he has some delay in his speech development. What is Luang Por's comments and advice over these sightings? Thank you. Well, not uncommon. Over the years living here, quite a few families have brought their children and said that they've seen beings, images that they believe are ghosts or devas. So you're certainly not alone. Ajahn Chah used to say, well, if you see things that are in this kind of unusual category, that may be beings in other realms, just remember that everything is not sure, not certain. Sometimes you see something and it may be what you think it is. If you think it's a ghost or a being, a deva, it may be. Or maybe it's just a flash of light, or an animal, or an object, immovable object. So keep that open-mindedness so that you can learn from these experiences. It may be exactly what you think it is, it may be not. That's the first thing. So it's not certain, not sure. So you can pass that on to your child. As you say, it could be beings, people who have died in that place, a house or a hall or neighbourhood. It's possible. Those with skill in meditation sometimes see these beings and confirm, yes, there are beings in other realms. When people die, not all are reborn as humans. Some are born in heaven realms, deva realms, some are born in ghost realms, and so on. So going on what the Buddha taught, and those who have practiced and developed skill in meditation, we can assume there's a strong possibility that these things do exist. And sometimes kids see them. Why? We often think kids don't think so much, in the sense they're not bothered so much by their moods and their stressful thoughts. They don't mentally proliferate as much as adults. Often adults think too much and give too much importance to every little thought and get very neurotic and not peaceful at all. So sometimes it's a reflection on the spaciousness in the mind of a child. They're not that attached to the world yet. They haven't absorbed so much information and language as adults. Often their mind is a little bit more peaceful and open. So sometimes some children see things. That's all right. You can explain, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if it is, then it's just somebody who's died and is in that area. There shouldn't be any reason to be afraid, and you can reassure them of that. Because if you just see something, an image, what's there to fear? They can't hurt you, they can't do anything. Usually, if it's a ghost, then it's a person who's unhappy and they're attached to their unhappy state of mind, and they may be attached also to a place where they used to live or have some mental attachment for before they died. Or maybe it's the place they did die. And if your mind is particularly clear, or you're just in that level where you can see these things, then you're just picking up on what's there, but there's nothing to be afraid of. Monks regularly have experiences where they see devas or ghosts, and it's just an image, isn't it? Just an image comes across your eyes, or if it's in your meditation, you see it in your mind's eye. Those images arise and pass away, they're impermanent. What arises and passes away, one doesn't have to give too much importance to, because it's just a temporary image. It may be telling you something, but it's still just a temporary image. Nothing to be afraid of. We should be more afraid of our own wrong thinking, our delusions, our attachment to wrong views, our attachment to thoughts rooted in greed and selfishness, rooted in anger. We should be afraid of those things, those mental states, more than any external ghost or deva. These images we see on the outside, there's very little that they can do to harm us. More, maybe we can just practice kindness and compassion. And if there is such a being wherever we are, we'll just wish them well. May they be at peace, may they be happy, may they share in the goodness of our practice and what we're doing, cultivating the Buddhist path. So just as we shared merit just now in our chanting, we share merit with beings in all realms, higher realms, realms of happiness, lower realms, realms of suffering, and human realms. And human beings are sometimes suffering and sometimes happy. And we share merit with all beings. So encourage your child just to have that attitude of being one who shares. If there is a being there, then you just share merit with them, wish them well. If there's no being there, doesn't matter then, nothing is lost. Same with animals, isn't it? You live in the forest or the jungle somewhere, you'll meet all kinds of creatures. Some are attractive, some are ugly, some are fierce, some are very soft. And you practice kindness and compassion for them all. And this is part of life, just getting to practice what we call the Brahma Vihara Dhammas in daily life. Kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and then equanimity. And that's another part of our practice in establishing mindfulness and maintaining equanimity in the case where you may see something you think is a ghost or a spirit. Keep your mindfulness, keep your equanimity in that situation. Don't let it shake your mind. Don't let it worry you or bring you fear. Let go of the fear, the worry. Or if it's a deva, maybe you're excited. Oh, a deva. Well, don't get caught up in the excitement. Try and keep your evenness of mind with mindfulness. This is how we practice. This is what we get from our meditation. Learning to be even-minded in the face of many different kinds of phenomena, different mental states, different sight, sound, taste, smell, touch. maintaining mindfulness and equanimity, not to give in to attachment, attraction or aversion. One time I took some teachers from Thailand down the Great Ocean Road to show them some of the beauty of the Victorian coastline. It's cliffs and sea and forest and mountains, very beautiful place. And we went, the lay people hired or rented some cabins in the forest, quite far inland into the forest. So we went and stayed there, and the monks all thought, oh, it's just like a forest monastery, staying in little cabins in the trees on a mountainside. And the first night in one of the cabins, one of the monks, he was just about to go to sleep, he was doing his meditation, and he said he had this vision of this little boy come in. And monks tend, if they have some samadhi, they'll tend to see things more clearly and understand better what's going on. You know, if you're a child, you might just see a passing vision and you're not sure what it is. But if somebody's got skill in meditation, they may meditate and have a clear image of a being, a person, male, female, in some form or another. And this monk, he was sitting there, and this little boy came into his cabin. He's a ghost. And the little boy ghost was like a little mischievous boy, and he came up to the monk and he said, "Well, you're a smelly monk. I don't like you," in the way a naughty, mischievous boy might say. And the monk was saying, "Oh, you shouldn't say that. I'm a Buddhist monk, and I keep very strict discipline, and I do a lot of good. And I also have a picture of Ajahn in my bag, and Ajahn is an enlightened master, so you really shouldn't, and I'm a student of Ajahn, you really shouldn't be so rude." And then when the monk had said that to the little boy ghost, a little deva came in, a little fairy. He said the fairy was different from the fairies or the devas he's seen in Thailand, because it looked like an Australian, a young Australian woman came floating in, and she told the boy off and said, "Don't be naughty and disrespectful for the monk." So the boy floated off, and then the little deva, she dived into the monk's bag to where Ajahn Chah's picture was and disappeared. So that's a true story. So sometimes you get insight from those who can meditate, and they have skilled meditation. They can hold their equanimity, and their mind is very sensitive, so they actually see and know and maybe can even communicate with such a being. But if you don't have that level of mindfulness, don't worry. It's just an image, you see something, it passes away, and that's the end of it. Another question. Luang Por, I have a question about trust. My Dhamma friend always said he is willing to give me a hand when I face any difficulties. However, I take it as a promise and really asking for support. He just listens and didn't take time to think about the problem or give considered advice. I lost trust in this close Dhamma friend. How should we react in the Dhamma? How to trust friends again? Well, maybe you have to manage your expectations, lower your expectations a little bit. None of us are perfect. So yeah, some friends will listen but not do much when you're in trouble. But at least they're listening is better than nothing. And it's better than them being, hurtful to you and trying to harm you or say bad things behind your back or do something aggressive to you or something like that. So some friends are a little bit more passive or indifferent. Well, You just have to accept that. You get to know your friends, don't you? Some friends are really reliable, they'll always have a good word for you. This is what the Buddha said, a true friend, they only talk about the good in you and praise you or lift up your good qualities and encourage you in those good qualities. They'll tend to set aside your weaknesses and faults. And a good friend will stick with you through thick and thin. When things are going well, they're with you and by your side. When things are going badly, they're still by your side. When you're healthy, they're with you. When you're sick, they're with you. When you've got money in your pocket, they're with you. When you've got no money in your pocket, they're still with you. True friends, reliable friends are like that. So, if your friend isn't giving you good advice, well, maybe you have to be a little bit forgiving of your friend. Perhaps they're not that wise. All of us have our moments when we're not that wise. As long as, the way I see it, as long as they're not attacking you or giving you trouble, then that's already a step up. That's already good. But yes, if you have a friend who can really give you good advice, then that's a really valuable friend. Kalyana Mitta, they always advise you in the way of Dhamma to practice or solve problems or lead your life or practice in the way of Dhamma. So they'll encourage you only to do good things, solve your problems using the Dhamma teachings, so to use wholesome, skillful ways to solve your problems. They'll encourage you in skillful ways of action. And the Kalyana Mitta is a good example themselves. They'll practice what they preach. So they'll walk the talk. They'll do what they tell you to do, they'll do. So they set a good example, somebody to emulate. And the Buddha said they're lovable, they're kind. They're friendly, they're kind. You're happy to spend time with them. It sounds like your friend maybe is a little bit indifferent, a little bit too cold perhaps. It's hard to tell, but a true friend, a good friend is warm to you. And they're sympathetic when you're in trouble, they lend an ear to you, and if they can, they give you good advice. Or they certainly won't give you bad advice and lead you in wrong ways. A true friend, when you're in trouble, they maybe say some words that help to calm you down, soothe you, and then maybe help you think through your problem, look at some different options, try and encourage you to use your own intelligence to solve your problems. A bad friend will say, let's go and get drunk and then worry about the problem tomorrow, and then you come back and you've got more problems because you got drunk and you said or did foolish things, and your original problem is still there waiting to be solved. Yeah. So, we have to get to know our friends and who we can rely on and who's not so helpful. That's part of life. We try and associate with the wise, good people, and maybe spend less time with those who are more harmful or more tending to lead us in bad ways. So if you associate with Sangha, they're good friends. If you have problems, well, you can always come and ask the monks or the nuns. You can look at how they solve their problems, how they practice. Generally, if they're applying what the Buddha taught, then there'll be good examples. So staying close to Sangha, you get good Kalyana Mitta, good Dhamma friends. A true friend also, they're able to point out your weaknesses to you, aren't they? So a true friend, they won't just say what you want to hear, they won't just flatter you. Sometimes you have to step back and consider this point. If somebody is actually telling you what you need to hear, even though you don't want to hear it, maybe they're actually being a friend. Because sometimes we turn against someone who's telling us the truth and telling us something useful. But because we don't want to hear it, if you're particularly We say in this modern age, we say if you've got a big ego and that person is not willing to massage your ego, but they're actually telling you what you need to hear, some home truths, maybe they're still a good friend. You have to consider that. If you've only got the flatterers around you, well, you'll never learn maybe, and you'll never really see the truth, and maybe your bad habits will get worse. And you'll become like the emperor with the new clothes, and you're wearing the new clothes and you've been fooled and you're wearing nothing, you're naked, but your friends around you are not willing to tell you, so you're making a fool of yourself. So a good friend will be able to give you the home truths. They tell you the good things, but they can also tell you the important things you need to hear when you don't really want to hear them. Even the Buddha was like that. The Buddha sometimes said, "You monks, I'm not just going to spoil you and tell you what you want to hear. If you're making a mistake, going wrong, I'm going to tell you." That's a good friend, isn't it? Luang Por, when the mind is overwhelmed by sadness because of unresolved issues, I ask why and who is the subjective experiencer. Then I can see that it's due to perceptions and memories giving rise to thoughts and opinions fueled by attachment. The thoughts then go back and forth with perceptions, triggering more thoughts. The root cause is craving and clinging. Then I see it's actually the aggregates of perception and mental formations caused by craving and clinging that is causing the mental suffering on unresolved issues. Then I let go of the thoughts and come back to the breath by breathing hard. Out of compassion, I request Luang Por for your guidance. Well, yes, clinging and dwelling on the past, especially unresolved issues, things that have brought us sadness and regret, is a huge problem that most people face from time to time. We love to carry along baggage from the past, go over and over again over memories and past experiences. So we're always looking to how to improve our mindfulness, bring up this quality of knowing, present moment awareness, so we can see or know what's going on in our mind and recognize if we are clinging to the past, dwelling on it, thinking about it over and over again, we can see the suffering of what we're doing and then start letting go. One thing I don't think you've mentioned in this question is that the whole process of craving and clinging is actually triggered by feeling. Feeling is like the tone of our experience, pleasant, neutral or unpleasant. So if you do have a memory arise, that'll be an image, some thought, and there'll be a feeling that comes with it. And that's a big part of the suffering, especially if it's unpleasant feeling. It could be unpleasant mental feeling. So with sadness, say, that's very obvious. You feel a certain way, unpleasant, maybe even painful. But there's physical feeling as well. There's physical pain, physical pleasure, and there's mental pain, mental pleasure. And the feeling is what triggers craving, which triggers attachment. So pleasant feeling, we are attracted to that. We like it, we want it, we crave it, desire it. And that will trigger mental formations, thoughts, and views based on that pleasure. So you keep thinking about that pleasure, you want more of it, you want to hold on to it, and you'll also form a world view that that pleasure is good for you, it's what you like, I want more of it. Painful experiences, painful feeling, conditions craving in its own way, conditions, what we call vipawadanha, craving not to become. I don't want to become somebody with this kind of pain. I don't want this pain. I want to get rid of this pain. So the feeling, the tone of the experience triggers, when we're not mindful, we're not aware, it'll trigger reaction of craving for or against, which hardens into clinging or attachment. So this is a clue, this is a way you can, an avenue you can start exploring, becoming more mindful of feelings triggering craving, which triggers thinking and attachment. And if you're more mindful, you might be able to just be mindful of feeling arising, but then allow it to pass away, seeing feeling as just feeling. This is the second foundation of mindfulness, isn't it? It's the form, physical form, and then there's feeling. And the Buddha said, see form in form, feeling in the feeling, meaning know the feeling as it is. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant, neutral. So if you are feeling sad, try to pay attention and hold awareness just at the feeling of sadness. And that might overwhelm your mind if it's a very strong feeling based on some past incident or memory. But maintain mindfulness at that point, so you know the feeling, you know any accompanying images, memories coming up, but you know them just as a memory, just as a feeling, and then you let go. And you're cutting off the craving and the mental proliferation, the trains of thought, the endless trains of thought going around in circles based around that feeling, that memory, that experience. That's a big part of our practice, is establishing mindfulness over and over again and letting the feeling pass all by itself. The feeling arising is the result of karma. We call it vibhaka karma, resultant karma. So something has happened, it's left an impression on our mind, and when the causes and conditions are right, it will re-emerge as a memory maybe with an accompanying feeling. But if your mindfulness is there, you can know this is a memory, this is coming up based on past karma. I'll accept it, acknowledge it, and then I'll let it go without creating further or new suffering out of that experience. If you keep doing that, keep applying this mindfulness and this wisdom into that memory or that particular feeling, set of feelings and emotions that are coming up, you keep applying mindfulness, keep reflecting on it as impermanent, you'll start to see it as not self and not really you or a person. It's just a mental state, a memory, a mental state arising, and then you can let it go. And you're gradually giving it less and less importance in your mind, so it will trigger or stimulate less suffering, less of the thinking, the trains of thought associated with suffering. The mind will have more clarity, more understanding of what's going on, and will let go of the suffering. So it will bother you less and less. Memory in itself is just memory. And you'll never get rid of memory as long as you're alive and you've got a mind that functions, you'll be able to remember. Of course, as we get older, sometimes memory does go. As the brain degenerates, we have memory loss. But generally speaking, memory is always there. But the suffering comes from the identification, the attachment with the memory, the importance we give it. The more often that we give too much importance to a memory, it causes us suffering. So rather than just seeing a memory as a memory arising, passing away, we build it up, we cling to it, we indulge in it. So this is where mindfulness will help release you from that cycle. And you can find maybe even sometimes when your mindfulness is stronger and more continuous, you can find quite quick results in letting go there. And to bring up mindfulness, you can use the breath. Sometimes it's as simple as taking a few deep breaths, isn't it? You remember something that went wrong, that thing you said that you shouldn't have said, that event that happened that you shouldn't have happened and you didn't want to happen, but it happened, and the memory comes up, and you get a sort of sigh, and you're starting to suffer again, but then you catch what you're doing, you take a few deep breaths. Sometimes that's all it takes, a few deep breaths, and you re-establish mindfulness. You let go of the habit pattern of becoming sad or irritated with yourself or depressed, disappointed at that moment. By taking the few deep breaths, you let go. Sometimes it's simple as that. So have that as a little strategy ready. When I'm feeling angry, depressed, sad, worry, anxious, take some deep breaths, and already you'll probably feel a little bit better. And then you can maybe consider what's going on in your mind better and get some clarity, and then you can further let it go. Another question. Recently I turned 70. Congratulations. And suddenly have had various health issues all at the same time. The birthday present you didn't want. I'm having difficulty coming to terms with it. How do I deal with this? It's life, isn't it? We all get older every day, and every birthday brings us closer to old age, and generally brings us closer to sickness, brings us closest to death. This is life. Life is bound up with aging, sickness and death, and the older we get, the more of it we have to face. So brace yourself. Bring up some resilience, some patience, and accept that's what happens to human bodies as they get older. They will start to wear out, bring more aches and pains, more problems, and sometimes they all come at once. Different things go wrong at the same time. Sometimes it's one thing after another. It's another pattern that we have to get used to. You just solve one issue and then another issue arises, and then another, and then another. Or sometimes several issues at the very same time. Sometimes it's simply because they were all there anyway, and you just you go to the doctor or go into the hospital and they are assessing you or doing tests on one thing, and then it reveals all the other things at the same time. It's just life. You just have to get used to it. Be ready for it. Ajahn Chah used to say when the monks got ill with something and they go and see him, he'd say, I was waiting for that. Because it's inevitable. There's nobody who gets younger, there's nobody who never has sickness, and there's nobody who doesn't die. We're all going to die. It's just normal. Get used to it. Everyone in this room will die. I'm going to die, you're going to die. Because we don't reflect on these truths, we don't become aware of the impermanence of this physical body, the impermanence of this world, because we don't reflect mindfully on these truths, so then they catch us out, catch us by surprise, they shock us, they annoy us, they instill fear in us. Just these simple facts of life cause us suffering because we haven't been contemplating them, getting ready. So the quicker you come to terms with reality, the more peace and happiness you'll find. And it's possible to be very peaceful and happy in the midst of aging, sickness and death. It's possible to be unattached. It's possible to be in a very pleasant, happy state of mind, even though physically sometimes we're in a mess. It's possible for one who's trained their mind, who's reflected on these truths. They can do it. But we have to practice, and that's why we call it practice. All of us have to die. All of us get old. All of us have to die. It's the one thing you know for sure in life. Everything else is uncertain. When you'll die and all the kind of things you're going to do between now and when you die, who you'll meet, where you'll go, what will happen to you, good and bad. It's very difficult to predict. But you can predict you will die for sure. You think about it, say you're sitting at home and someone rushes into the room you're sitting in, and they say, you're all going to die right now. You'd probably go into panic, wouldn't you? We're all going to die. But actually it's true. You are all going to die. Of course, we don't want it to happen. So anyone who sort of says, I'm going to kill you, or say an animal, a wild animal comes into the room, and someone throws a tiger into your room, and you run around going, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. But actually you're going to die anyway, aren't you? We're all going to die anyway. It's the one thing you know is coming, so you might as well reflect on it every day. Buddha said, remind yourself every day, I'm of the nature to die, I've not gone beyond dying. I'm of the nature to sicken, I've not gone beyond sickness. It's just the normal way of things. Why do we resist what's normal? And I'm not saying everyone has to die young or die early, but I'm just saying it happens. It's going to happen, so you might as well just come to terms with it. You come to terms with it by reflecting on it. This body is limited, it's imperfect, it's suffering, it's not self, you can't control it, you can't make it stay young, healthy and not die, it's impossible. So bring your mind to see these truths, know these truths, then you can be at peace with them. If you follow the Buddhist teachings, you'll recognize, I've already died before. This life is not my first life. This is the product of our previous life. So you've already been through this, and you'll go through it at the end of this life. This is why we aim for Nibbana. Nibbana is called the deathless, where there's no more birth, aging, sickness and death. That's why the Buddha said it's the highest happiness. Getting out of this cycle, stepping off the conveyor belt. True liberation. Reflect on this every day and look at what are the causes for the clinging and attachment that brings us to more rebirth. And that's craving, clinging, greed, anger, delusion. They're our real enemies. Sickness is not our real enemy. You do your best with sickness, injury, aging, you do your best to look after the body, treat it well, but the real enemies are greed, anger and delusion in your mind. They're the real source of suffering. You can be perfectly healthy, young, healthy, and be miserable through greed, anger and delusion. Let them go. Work on that. Much more valuable to you. Lumpur. As I was contemplating, I realized that during meditation I am most of the time experiencing rapture and mental fabrications. Well, that sounds good. I think a lot of people would like to experience rapture. At times I contemplate on the body and see the four elements. Correct? That's good. I think I'm stagnant at this stage. Is it because I'm not putting enough effort in watching the breath in daily life besides meditation? Kindly advise how to get a breakthrough, how to break through this stagnant stage. Well, the Buddha talked about the 5 spiritual faculties. It's one way we describe our practice. They are saddha, faith or confidence in the teachings, in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Virya, persistent effort. Sati, mindfulness. Samadhi, stillness. Panya, insight or wisdom. These 5 faculties we are maturing through our Dhamma practice. All our efforts are maturing the 5 faculties, but sometimes they're out of balance. So samadhi, one of the drawbacks of samadhi, it can make us a little dull, stagnant, as you say. It can numb us, it can bring up pleasure or rapture, as you said, but that can make us dull. It's pleasant on one level, but we're not yet free from the causes of suffering. We haven't yet developed insight or wisdom, maybe. So when the samadhi is conditioning dullness, stagnation in the mind, the Buddha said it's due to a lack of virya, effort, energy. So virya balances and complements samadhi. Saddha is complemented by panya. So saddha, faith, confidence, needs wisdom to balance it and guide it, because sometimes you put your faith in the wrong place or the wrong person or the wrong set of views. Sometimes though we also have too much wisdom in the beginning of the practice. Wisdom here meaning just too much intelligence, our critical faculty, the thinking mind runs wild. It's not backed up by enough faith and confidence, so we just pull everything down. We're just critical of everything, don't believe anything, don't have any confidence or faith in anything, so we're stuck also. We're not putting forth effort in our practice because we doubt everything and find fault with everything. So faith and wisdom balance each other. Samadhi and virya balance each other. Mindfulness is in the middle, kind of managing the whole lot. So if you're finding you're stagnating in your practice, and it does happen, you meditate and you feel more calm, maybe have some rapture, some calm, some bliss even. It could be physical feelings of tranquility, contentment, mental tranquility. It anesthetizes us a little bit, so the mind sort of stagnates, like you say. We need energy, effort to pull it out of that, to take the mind to a different, higher level. So we need to recognize when stagnation is taking place. That's where you need the mindfulness. Mindfulness says, now I need to put forth more effort. Refine the effort in maintaining mindfulness, put effort into the mindfulness, and then contemplate. Virya, in this sense, virya is leading on to Dhamma vichaya, investigation of the Dhamma. So we need to pull the mind out of the stagnant state and then contemplate one aspect of the truth. So it could be the Four Noble Truths, contemplate craving, how craving is the cause of suffering, how can I abandon craving? Contemplate the 3 characteristics, see craving and its objects as impermanent, suffering, not self. So wisdom will be coming up based on this effort, increased effort. We turn the mind to contemplate, to get it out of its stagnant state. So balance your samadhi with virya, balance your faith with wisdom, and develop mindfulness in the middle to pull everything along and keep things maturing and developing together. Last question is in Thai. So I'll read it and answer in Thai first, and then I'll give you an English translation. พระอาจารย์ข้ารบกวนถามการสวดมนต์และการนั่งสมาธิจะได้สมาธิเหมือนกันไหมก็เหมือนกันได้ในระดับหนึ่งนะสวดมนต์จะเป็นบทสวดเช่นอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสวดไปเรื่อยๆมีสติกับการสวด หรือจะสวดคำเดียวเช่นคำบริกรรมพุทโธพุทโธพุทโธธัมโมธัมโมธัมโมสังโฆสังโฆสังโฆเราสวดเป็นบทสวดพระปริตหรือสวดบทใดบทหนึ่งหรือสวดท่องคำปาลีสักคำหนึ่งเป็นวิธีฝึกสติให้เกิดสมาธิได้แต่ว่าจะเกิดสมาธิถึงระดับอุปจารสมาธิเพราะว่าคำบริกรรมหรือบทสวดยังเป็นอารมณ์ค่อนข้างหยาบไม่สามารถที่จะเข้าถึงอัปปนาสมาธิหรือฌานได้แต่เป็นพื้นฐานที่ดีเพราะอาจจะมีความหมายดีกับเราสวดคำบริกรรมหรือสวดบทสวดเช่นอิติปิโสอาจจะเกิดศรัทธาด้วยเกิดกำลังใจในการสวดเป็นอารมณ์ที่ตัดความง่วงได้ดีเป็นอารมณ์ที่จะตัดความฟุ้งซ่านได้ดีก็เลยหลายคนเขาจะเริ่มภาวนาด้วยการสวดมนต์ก็ไม่ผิดเนี่ยจะอาจจะเกิดสมาธิขึ้นมามีปีติมีสุขมีสมาธิมีสติขึ้นมาแต่พอเราได้สมาธิแล้วในระดับหนึ่งเราอยากจะทำให้สมาธิละเอียดขึ้นเราอาจจะหยุดการสวดหรือการท่องคำบริกรรมแล้วก็จับอารมณ์ละเอียดเช่นหายใจเข้าหายใจออกครูบาอาจารย์ก็สอนถ้าสมมติว่าเราท่องพุทโธหรือธัมโมหรือสังโฆท่องไปเรื่อยๆจิตจะเริ่มละเอียดจะมีอาการของสมาธิก็มีวิตกวิจารปิติสุขเอกคตาจิตนิ่งเป็นหนึ่งขึ้นมาคำบริกรรมจะค่อยๆหายจากใจเพราะมันหนักไปใจก็จะเริ่มเพ่งที่ใจของจุดศูนย์กลางของใจเองคือรู้ตัวเองไม่ต้องมีคำบริกรรมคือมีสติแล้วสติต่อเนื่องแล้วอาจจะจับลมหายใจเข้าออกก็ได้เป็นอารมณ์ต่อไปเข้าถึงสมาธิที่ละเอียดแต่ไม่ใช่ว่าบทสวดไม่ดีเพราะมันหยาบกว่าดีอยู่อาจจะจำเป็นอยู่อาจจะถึงอุปจารสมาธิข้ามนิวรณ์ทำได้เพียงจะเข้าถึงฌานไม่ได้เพราะยังมีการเคลื่อนไหวของความคิดคำบริกรรมถ้าจะเข้าถึงความนิ่งเราก็ต้องเพ่งจิตโดยล้วนๆโดยไม่ต้องใช้คำบริกรรมก็เป็นขั้นตอนของการเจริญสมาธิภาวนาแต่ว่าก็ใช้ได้หลายกรณีนะสวดมนต์ขับรถก็สวดได้เดินก็สวดได้ทำกิจอะไรสักอย่างก็สวดได้อาจจะพิจารณาความหมายของบทสวดด้วยเกิดปัญญาด้วยก็เลยบางครั้งบางกรณีการสวดมนต์ถูกต้องเป็นประโยชน์มาก This question is asking, does one gain the same samadhi from chanting or reciting Dhamma as one does from meditation? So I was saying, well, chanting is a form of meditation. One is aiming to chant or recite the Dhamma with mindfulness and use it as a way to learn to bring up mindfulness, pay attention to the chant, the recitation that one is doing, whether it's a reflection or a parita chant, or the morning, evening chanting, or it could be one word. So in Thailand they use Buddho a lot, or Dhammo, or Sangho, which is the same thing. You're reciting one single word because that has very good meaning for you if you find it inspiring and has meaning. And maybe one word is enough to hold your attention. So you just recite that one word over and over again to yourself. Or some people will chant a whole verse, say Iti Piso Bhagava Arahang Sama. It's the same thing. It's a word or a series of words which you're putting your attention on to develop mindfulness, which can become samadhi, and the mind can settle down into what we call upajjhara samadhi, go beyond the hindrances and become very peaceful and content. But it's not as deep as jhana or appana samadhi, because the object is still a word, and there's some movement of mind reciting the word, holding that word in mind, or a series of words, a chant or a verse. So it won't go to the deepest level of samadhi, but it can still help you to attain samadhi, and it's a very valid form of meditation. And often it's necessary because people often find it hard to go to a very subtle object like the breath. When they begin their meditation, often they need something a little coarser to hold their attention. So that's why we do chanting. It helps to cut through sleepiness and worry and doubt. Often the chant has a good meaning, so it also brings up some wisdom and understanding. And as you recite those words, or whether it's one single word or a series of words, you know whether you're mindful or not, because if you're not mindful, you stop saying the word. It's a very clear meditation object, so in the beginning it's a very good one. Something like the breath, how often do we fool ourselves that we say, I'm sitting here watching my breath go in and out, but we're not. We're just thinking a lot of thoughts. And we're fooling ourselves that we're watching the breath when we're just thinking. Very common experience. Or we're sleepy. People are sitting there saying, I'm watching my breath go in and out, but they're actually falling asleep. It's quite a mature practice to successfully stay with the in and out breath for a period of time and attain samadhi. So sometimes chanting, recitation of a single word or verses is a very good way to prepare the mind in meditation and then move on to a more refined object, such as the body or the breath. So experiment with this, and sometimes chanting or recitation of Dhamma or recitation of a word, one word, is a very versatile object. So you can walk along the road reciting Buddha or chanting Iti Piso. We do circumambulation, so people on their birthday, they come here and they can go around the hall, depending on your age, 33. Different in Dhamma practice, isn't it? When you're out there in the world, nobody likes to tell anyone their real age, do they? So they say, I'm 29, when you're 40. In Dhamma, we don't do it that way, we're the opposite. We say, I'm 40. Okay, 40 times walking around the hall, reciting Iti Piso, and so you may get samadhi by doing that, because your mind becomes very firm, mindful on the chant. So the older you are, or the more honest you are about your age, you might actually get enlightened quicker. If you're always hiding your age, keeping it very young, very low number, then you're not going to do so much practice, you're not going to get such strong samadhi. So, don't be scared of doing 50 Iti Piso chants on your 50th birthday, or whatever it is. Chanting is a very good way to maintain mindfulness and bring up mindfulness in different situations. Walking, doing some task, gently reciting to yourself, can be a very good meditation object. And then maybe when you are sitting and you're very still, well then you use a more refined object like the breath, which will take you into a deeper level of samadhi. So that's tonight's questions and answers. I hope that's been helpful to you in your practice, and we wish you well in your Dhamma practice.